As we continue on the journey to self-discovery, you will find that it will become much more easier for you once you learn to discover yourself, who you are, what your purpose is, what God created you in this world to do, your abilities, your talents, the gifts that God has given you. When you get to know all those things about yourself, it becomes very easy for you to know who actually can become a good partner to you, whether it's business or whether it's in a relationship for marriage purposes. You will begin to know who speaks to your purpose and who speaks to your mission, and you will have a more objective reason for choosing them, rather than just choosing somebody because they're beautiful, or because you like the way they talk, or you like the way they laugh, or you enjoy that they have money and they have a nice car. You will start to pick rightly in a way that okay, if I can be with this one, I'm going to grow. Or if I'm going to be with this person, they are going to thwart my purposes, and I will not be able to be myself, to be true to who I am. So let's continue reading. By taking care of our whole being and embracing our unique design, we'll become better equipped to recognize red flags and unhealthy patterns in ourselves and our potential partners, develop a strong sense of identity and personal boundaries, cultivate the effective communication and conflict resolution skills, and you will be able to build a foundation of trust, respect, and emotional intimacy in our future marriage. So these are some of the things that actually come when you begin to know who you are and you discover yourself. So let's try to zoom in and talk about recognizing red flags. So how do you recognize red flags? That could be unhealthy patterns, for a start, the first point. So you learn to identify harmful habits such as codependency or enabling, and work on replacing them with healthy coping mechanisms. So when you start knowing about yourself and who you are, you can recognize when you are becoming codependent. That means you're depending on other people too much, as if you yourself, you are not enough. I'm not saying don't ask for help. You do need to ask for help, but you do not need to then become dependent. When you talk about dependency, we're talking about a point where you're in a relationship and you find that you're not able to cope when that person or your partner is not there, or your husband or your wife is not there. You're not able to cope. That is not how God has intended you to live your life, depending on other people. Because the minute you start depending on somebody, they can manipulate you, or they can become frustrated because of that dependency syndrome that you now have. And the next thing that you can do to recognize red flags, another way, is emotional unavailability. So when you get into a relationship and you see that somebody is not emotionally available to you, remember we spoke in the part 1 of this self-discovery that God wants us to grow in all facets of our lives, not just spiritual, because I know sometimes we as Christians, we may focus just on spiritual growth, but there's also emotional growth. There's physical growth, there's mental growth, there's social growth. There's so many areas in which we need to grow, and emotional growth is one very critical area. So when you find that somebody is emotionally unavailable, then that already brings you a red flag that they have emotional issues that are going on in their lives, and they will eventually turn into trust issues. So let's read here. Emotional unavailability. Understand the sign of emotional unavailability in yourself or a partner. The difficulty with intimacy or commitment, and explore strategies to develop emotional intelligence. So you must be very intentional when you've realized that this person is not able to be available to me emotionally. When I'm feeling sad, it's like they are not touched, or they are not able to be there for you. I'm not saying they should be there in a way to cripple you, but they should at least show some level of compassion. Even God himself has compassion. So they should be able to show some level of compassion. But if you find that somebody is a hard nut to crack emotionally, then there is a lot of work to be done there. And while you are still in the phase of courtship, you can try to learn to see if this person is able to grow in that area. That is the purpose why we have courtships, to assess growth. How are they developing? What's happening emotionally? If they've been emotionally unavailable, try to be intentional and explore strategies that can help each one of you to be emotionally intelligent. And another problem emotionally is also somebody who goes on the other extreme of being too emotional. Just a small little thing can turn into something very big, and they get angry and they can start shouting and screaming, so when you find that you have somebody like that, also try to work on those issues while you're still courting and see if they're growing, and be very intentional about the strategies that you're using about working on these issues. And then the other thing that you will have to assess and recognize as a red flag is misaligned values. I really love talking about these misaligned values. You need to identify your core values as a person before you even see them in somebody else. If they're aligning with you, you have to know who you are. That's why we're talking about self-discovery. You know what you value. Let's say, for example, you love to go to church, you love to pray, you love serving others in the community, and you are a giving person. And then you meet somebody who maybe doesn't like to pray or doesn't value the community the same way that you value. They're not generous, and you know that you have to give to the community. So how are you going to meet halfway in that regard? So it's very important to know that our values here are misaligned, especially if it's the most important values that are misaligning. Where are you going? You will not get anywhere if you're not going to the same destination, right? So identify your core values and learn to recognize when they may be compromised in a relationship. Then develop the courage to prioritize and communicate your values. You need to communicate your values. You cannot not communicate and then surprise each other when you've been married and start saying, no, when I was alone, when I was single, I used to do this work, I used to do, and somebody gets surprised when they're in the marriage now that, oh, this is actually a core value, but I can't do that. I can't go to spirit mediums because I'm a Christian, but that person's core value is that they inquire from spirit mediums. So already when you were in the courtship phase, you should have known that core value, that no, we won't be, this is very important to me, so we are misaligned, I have to end the relationship. So it's very important to be courageous to communicate some of those things so that everybody is clear that we are not going there, or if we go this way, we go this far, we don't go too far. So embracing self-love and self-awareness now will lead to a more fulfilling and God-honoring marriage where nobody is surprised and they feel like they were tricked into the marriage. And so let's embrace this journey of self-discovery, growing closer to God and ourselves as we prepare for a lifelong union.